Hello and welcome to another episode of the Atlas Sports Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the Eastern Conference Finale wrap up as well as the NBA Finals preview. Today is the day after Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Chandler, what are your initial takeaways from Heat Celtics Game 7 and the series as a whole?
Sadly for you, your TikTok was right about the whole but right before game 3 you made a TikTok saying how you think the Celtics are gonna take command and win this game, and then they're somehow just gonna blow out game 7, and that's kind of what happened. The Celtics didn't show up. I do feel a little bad for Jason Tatum. He rolled his ankle on the first play, and you could tell it bothered him the whole game. He only shot 13 shots, and I think that was because he knew his limitations. Jaylen Brown in the press conference even said that he knew it was his time to step up because Jason got hurt and he failed. I don't know what he shot, but I know he shot like 23 shots and only made like 5. He had 19 points. It was kind of just a depressing day to be a Celtics fan, but I think every Celtics fans need to let this sit in for a little bit before evaluating the offseason because the media, if it's Kendrick Perkins or anyone else, they're all, either Joe Mazzulla's trash, ship Jaylen Brown, this team needs to do something else. I think we need to sit and relax a little bit and really evaluate everyone's level and talent and where they can still grow on a standpoint of player to player and coach to coach. I think Mazzulla has a lot of room to grow, and I think it was a big step. He took accountability, say like after game 3 where he said he just didn't have the guys ready to play. So for them it was a sad night, but I think it was a lot of growing uh, that can be done still. And I don't think this is the ceiling at all for the team. So I think people need to push on the brakes a bit on all their hot takes right now. For the Heat, man, they almost made me think the last 3 games they just took it easy. Like they made this game look so easy. When you have Caleb Martin averaging 20 points this series, and he's out there not only being just a role player but creating the shot for himself. And then you have Jimmy Butler, who took accountability after Game 6, saying that his team did enough, but he didn't do enough. And in this game, he stepped up and he looked amazing. It shows the resilience in that team. I mean, they're doing history. Only one other team has made the finals as an 8 seed, and they're the second. And it kind of shows their resiliency. And I think it kind of shapes up how the playoffs now are working, as in you just gotta make the playoffs. I mean, high seeds are great and whatever, but you don't need a high seed to make it far. We saw the Lakers as a 7 seed make the Eastern Conference Finals, and we saw the Miami as an 8 seed make the Eastern Conference Finals, and the Lakers make the Western Conference Finals. So, I I think for a lot of these teams that are getting older, you just gotta make the playoffs. Especially if you have someone like Jimmy Butler or like LeBron, AD, who are potentially injury prone. You just gotta make the playoffs and be healthy. And then I also think it comes to, for every playoff run, you have to have a lot of things go right. It doesn't matter how talented you are. You have to stay healthy. You have to have the right side of the luck. I mean, it was so unlucky that Jason Tatum first play of the game goes down basically. And yes, he does play through it, but honestly, I mean, he didn't help the team that much where he didn't need to play through it. So I don't know. I think it shined a light on a lot of the playoff like realities, and I mean, I'm happy for the Heat. I am sad for the Celtics because I want them to come back and make history, but hopefully the Heat can make history by winning it all and being the first 8 seed to take it all.
Yeah, not only are they the first, or could they be the first 8 seed to win it all, they're also the first play-in team to be in the NBA Finals, which I think just kind of shows how well the play-in tournament has been working in its brief history. Um, it is a sad day for me, Celtics Nation. I try to be a little bit more reserved than some of my fellow fan base members. Um, I don't quite agree with all the people who immediately hop on TikTok or Twitter and say it's time to ship Jalen. Time to break up the Jays. It's time to fire Missoula. We need a real coach in there. I think people just lose sight of how hard it is to really win a championship in the NBA. And this is another topic for another time, but I think it puts a greater appreciation on LeBron going to 8 straight finals. I mean, the Jays and the Celtics team, probably the deepest team in the NBA. I mean, you could debate now the Nuggets are deeper, but they can't even make the NBA finals, and LeBron did that for 8 straight years. I mean, granted, he had amazing teams here and there, but also he had teams where he was largely by himself with some pretty clown starting fives, if you were to ask me.
I don't know. I think
But
Matthew Dellavedova is pretty good.
Kyrie level. Um, but it's going to be a long offseason. The Celtics are going to do some pretty good soul searching here and there. I think Missoula is going to grow a lot. I mean, people also forget that he was thrust into the starting position, I think, a day or two before the media day of the NBA. I mean, like, he was literally stepping into there, like, just right away. And sometimes in basketball, you just lose. That's just how I've been kind of coping with it. You don't win every game, not everything goes your way. Obviously, last night was not the game 7 that we wanted. I really wanted a masterpiece from the Jays. It would have been awesome if they could have combined for over 50 again, like they did in game 6. But, Jason gets hurt. Jalen has 8 turnovers. I mean, it just wasn't the game that we really wanted or hoped for. And as an NBA fan, not even just a Celtics fan, that was kind of a sad day in the NBA. Like, you really want a game 7 that's like, I'm gonna remember this for just years and years to come. And it'd be awesome if we got one more of this NBA postseason in the finals in a few weeks. However, I just don't really think that's gonna happen. But we'll get into that next topic. As far as what went right for the Heat this series, obviously their starting 5 minus Bam and Jimmy was sensational. Gabe Vincent and Caleb Martin scoring 25 each in different games. Caleb Martin averaging 19 points per game this series, higher than Bam by a few points. That was huge for them to win the series. I honestly did not really expect it. I don't want to say I was a Heat doubter, but I was really kind of doubting that those role players and that roster would outclass Boston's roster. And now I'm kind of sitting here being proved wrong. And I'm not going to make that mistake again when looking at the finals. I do think Denver is still deeper. They probably have higher talent all the way around. But the beautiful thing about the NBA is that it's just who's good when. And when you have the Heat that are just amazing for the first 3 games and the Celtics going on a really tumultuous 3-game run, it makes it easy for the Heat to go up 3-0. And ultimately now we're looking at a Heat Nuggets finals instead of what probably should have been a Nuggets Celtics finals. What went wrong for Boston? Obviously, you had players that just didn't show up all the time. And I think beyond the role players, what we've seen in the NBA Finals and the NBA champions the last few years is if you don't have a top 5 player on your team, you're just not going to win the championship. I mean, for all the Warriors runs, they had Steph, top 5 player, LeBron, top 5 player, KD, in and out top 5 player, Giannis, top 5 player.
At the time,
And
Kawhi was the top 5 player.
yeah, at the time, Kawhi was a top 5 player, maybe the best player in the world at that point.
Yeah.
But right now, Jason Tatum is not a top 5 player. He's not a top 5 player until it's hard for me to like put into words exactly what he needs to do other than just be the guy. And you can't be the guy on and off. And I don't want to ridicule him too much for game 7 because he did have the injury, but you can't not be the guy in the first 3 games, 0 points in the first 3 fourth quarters. I mean, I don't remember a single LeBron stat that's like that, KD stat that's like that, Steph stat that's like that. And hopefully that's the next step for Jason Tatum. But also, I want to keep something in perspective for Celtics fans. Steph Curry was 26 years old when he won his first NBA fan. LeBron was 27 when he won his first NBA finals. Michael Jordan and KD were both 20 when they won their first finals. And Jason Tatum today is 25 and Jaylen Brown is 26. There is time. All the greats did not accomplish all the rings this early in their careers. And it's not the end of the cliff for Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They still have time. I think they're going to keep it together, and they should. They should give Jaylen Brown the max this offseason, run it back with those two for at least the next 5 to 7 years. And then I think you can evaluate where things go. But for how young they are and for how close they are and what they've done together in their careers already is a remarkable feat that very few duos in NBA history can ever say they've done. And that's kind of where I stand with looking at the Celtics now and looking at the Heat going into the finals.
Yeah, I mean, also if you think about it, if the Celtics floor on a year-to-year basis is the conference finals, like you might want to roll with those chances for long term instead of bringing in someone. But I as we're doing now, I think it's key for Celtics fans to pump the brakes, talk about this later in the offseason, let this simmer down. But also, I want to cut up on a couple points here. I think the one big sad thing for me that Jason Tatum got injured is the last time we saw Jason Tatum up against his back, or back against the wall in a game 7, he had what, 54 points, 53 points, 51 points. Like we could have potentially saw that again. And not to knock the Miami Heat, I don't think they are this like LeBron stature team where I do agree to win a championship you probably need a top 5 player, but I don't think to win that game 7 you needed a top 5 player. So I think Jason Tatum could have wielded the Celtics to a win if he had another masterclass like that, and who says he wouldn't have had a masterclass like that? So that's the one bad thing I hate about I was sad about the injury. And then also the Miami Heat role players, well, role players, they're sometimes a little more than role players now, but they still impress us. I mean, they are shooting like upwards to 50% as a team from 3, and we always keep saying they'll come back, they'll fall back down to the mean. Like they'll just fall back down to the mean. They weren't this good in regular season. They're shooting 10 to 12% higher. They'll fall back down to the mean. Well, they haven't, and they are still not. So I think at this point we got to take that into the finals and thinking that that's a reality. They're probably going to shoot 50% from 3.
Absolutely. I saw JJ Redick talk about this morning, and it was a perspective shift for me where you know how we keep saying, oh, the Heat shooters like Caleb Martin, Gabe Vincent, Kyle Lowry, etc., having like a fluke playoffs where they're shooting way higher than they have this season. This season has been historically low for all those players when looking at the past previous years that they've been on the Heat. And this may just be a return to the norm for the Heat. I mean, it's not like the Heat were terrible before this year. I mean, since 2006, the Heat have been in the most finals in all of the NBA. And this version of the Heat were in the finals a few seasons ago in the bubble. Like, this isn't a team that is just now coming together for the first time. I mean, these people keep harping on the Heat for all these undrafted players, but really, they're players that have seen success and players that can replicate success. And for the first time, we may be seeing this Heat team come into its full form this season right now. Which
And I think it's important. You go.
I was going to finish out by just saying, I don't think it's crazy to think that they could keep this going in the finals.
Oh, 100%. But I think it's just a mix between Eric Spoelstra and Jimmy Butler that really wills this team together. I mean, Jimmy's in the press conference, and they asked about, like, all their role players, and Jimmy Butler literally said, you guys call them role players, I call them teammates, because they're more than just that. So, like, I really do think that Miami Heat culture is, like, a family, and it's literally, like, next man up. Like, Jimmy even said in a press conference, he goes, I have not been the most healthy in the past couple years, and when I'm not, these other players, they step up into their role. And when I come back, they know they have to take a lesser role, and they're okay with that because we are trying to win championships here. We're not trying to impress anyone. So I think a culture like that is hardly ever seen.
Definitely. And one thing, I'm glad you brought that up because one thing that I had not talked about that I do want to mention is it seemed like a very big difference between the Celtics and the Heat this series was when you listen to their post-game press conferences, the Celtics sometimes would be like, I'm just kind of shocked we're in this position. I don't really know how we got here. And I mean, granted, that was the first 3 games. Then when they started winning, it was like, don't let us win one more. Don't let us win another. And the entire time the Heat were in this series, it was Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry and some of the other guys that were just saying, I have the most confidence in the world in my guys, and they have the most confidence in me, and we will win this. We will get this done. And I think that sheer confidence alone could have won them that game 7 right out of the gate. And they did come right out of the gate, just firing on all cylinders. And that could have been the difference. I mean, obviously, Tatum's injury had a huge part in that too, but that could have been the difference alone in how they came out in game 7 and how game 7 ended up playing out.
Yeah, I mean, it was a crazy series regardless. A little sad at how it ended out, but I'm happy for the Heat. I think the Celtics just need time. I mean, we consider Marcus Smart their veteran. He's only 28. Like, they all just need to get older and grow and become better players. And Mazzulla needs another year. I think he'll be back in the same situation or better. So
Definitely. And I mean, this Celtics team is still fairly young. We mentioned the Jays earlier, but Derek White's 28, Marcus Smart is 28, Robert Williams 25, Al Horford's getting up there at 36, but Grant Williams 24. They just drafted him a few seasons ago. Malcolm Brogdon is their third oldest player at 30. And obviously you got a few young guys who haven't been seeing the rotation lately. But this team is not done.
no,
And that's kind of the takeaway that I have.
same.
Now moving on to the NBA Finals preview, can the Heat carry this momentum against the NBA's best and two-time MVP Nikola Jokic in the NBA Finals?
I'd say why not? I mean, they took down the best regular season team in the NBA in 5 games, and now they took down the second best team in the regular season in 7, but they took them 3-0 right away. So my first opinion is why not? Now I think there might be a lot of glaring issues that they might have to overcome, like Bam versus Jokic is probably a huge mismatch, especially because Bam's an undersized center. But why can't these shooters keep shooting 50% from 3? Why can't Jimmy Butler? Even the games he's not scoring a lot of points, it always feels like he just cruises until the fourth quarter and then he just turns into another mode and he wins them the game. So I think why not? That's just kind of my take. My brain tells me Nuggets, 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 but my heart is telling me Heat, 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 because they have proved everyone, including me, wrong all year long, all playoffs long. Literally everywhere I looked around, they were the underdogs in every single playoff series, and kind of minus the Celtics, and I would even say the Celtics, they look like they handled everyone with ease. It wasn't even a competition, it looked like. So, I think the Heat, I think their key to winning this is, I mean, their shooters got to keep shooting. They got to, if they go cold, they're done. I'm just going to be honest with you. I think if they go cold, they're done. They got to be hot, and Jimmy has to have probably a couple master classes in there. I see people compare this on the levels of like Jimmy and Kawhi run, and I think Jimmy needs to be on that Kawhi level if he wants to win this series. For Denver, I think they gotta just play smooth basketball. Um, Again, their team minus their role players, they've been together for a long time too. Jamal Murray's been hurt for a couple years out there, but I think Jokic, they still need to play through him. I think Jamal Murray still needs to be scoring about 30 points per game if they want to win, which he has been all playoff season or all playoff long. So why can't he do that again? And how much of it's a joke? I think MPJ needs to not be scared of shooting the ball. I think he needs to let that thing fly because when he gets hot, I think that whole Nuggets team gets hot. So that's kind of how I look at it. I think Jokic is going to be Jokic. He's going to average a triple double. He's probably going to have a game of 30 to 40, and he's probably going to get 15 rebounds and assists every game. And I don't think Heat can do anything about that. I think where the Heat have to focus on is like getting someone on Jamal Murray and like really shutting him down. If that's Jimmy or if that's Caleb Martin or any of their guys. I would also like to see the timeline. I think it's kind of hidden right now. The timeline for Tyler Hero. I know in that game 7 when I was watching it, a little teleprompter came up and it had a picture of Tyler Hero and it said he is like the doctors cleared him for basketball activity. Now is that just shoot arounds? Where will that go? So I don't know if this game goes into like 5 or 6 or 7. Maybe he could start playing. I think that'd be something like interesting to know because he would add another level of production. But at the same time, even when he's ready, I think you should be hesitant in bringing him back in because this team is so coherent right now, and they are winning against the best teams with this squad. That I think you pump the brakes, and unless your backs are against the wall and you really need him, then you bring him in. But I don't know what his timeline is. I've heard unlikely. I've heard I don't know, and then I saw that last night where it said he's cleared for basketball activity, so that at least means something. So I don't know where he's sitting on there, but if I had to come to a foregone conclusion about how I think the series go, my brain is telling me Nuggets in 6, but my heart is telling me Heat in 7.
I'm right there with you. My prediction is Nuggets in 6, but I really want to see Heat in 7. Before we get into the actual basketball analysis for me, though, I do want to mention something. In February, we saw the Kelsey Bowl, right, with the Eagles and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I want to start coining this finals as the Nikola Finals, with Nikola Jokic versus Nikola Jovic on the Heat, who's 21. I don't know if people know of Jovic a whole lot, but I hope we get to see the Nikola Finals.
That'll be
Anyways,
fun.
yeah. A couple things for the Heat. A few times when I've watched them, especially in this series, but earlier when they were playing the Bucks, they remind me a little bit of when San Antonio Spurs were in their glory days, when they would just pass like crazy and make open threes and keep passing until they found the open guy, right? Because I feel like that's how they cooked the Celtics at least a few times, and especially the Bucks when Jimmy didn't have his takeover games. And if they can do that against the Nuggets, I don't think the Nuggets have seen an opponent like that, especially in the playoffs. I mean, that's definitely not the Lakers style basketball at all. They just cooked the Timberwolves. But I think if the Heat can really get off to that pass first, I have confidence in all my guys, I think that's going to be a tremendous challenge for the Nuggets because the Nuggets are just used to saying, okay, we're going to take out your star players and then you're screwed, right? I mean, that's what they did to AD in game 2. They stopped him a little bit in game 4. LeBron got his numbers, but I mean, besides those two, it was kind of hit and miss. I mean, Rui was carrying a little bit here and there, but when Reeves was struggling, it usually turned into a Nuggets run. And I think if the Heat can, not let that happen to them, they're going to be kind of fine. I do want to mention something pretty interesting about the Nuggets this series. I don't know what their strategy will be for the Western Conference Finals yet, but their starting 5 in the Western Conference Finals averaged, it looks like 36 minutes a game, which I'm not sure if they're going to try to go deeper in the finals, but they really only played 7 guys in that Lakers series, besides a few guys that came in at the end of a few of their games. But I don't know how realistic, if this is going to be a long series, and granted, they've had some rest time now to get ready for this. I don't know how realistic it's going to be for Jamal Murray and Jokic to keep playing 42 minutes per game, to count on MPJ, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and Aaron Gordon to play at least 36 minutes per game when the Heat can just run so many guys at you so quickly. I mean, you have Duncan Robinson running all over the place, Gabe Vince running all over the place, Kyle Lowry goes here and there, and Caleb Martin. I just don't know how physical they're going to be able to compete when they have all these guys running around trying to get off ball screens, threes. It just seems like a little bit of a mismatch problem for the Nuggets there. And I think this whole series for the Heat is going to come down to how well can you guard Jamal Murray. Because we saw Jamal Murray absolutely torch the Lakers in all of their games. He ended up averaging 32 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists. And I think he should have won the Western Conference MVP in that series. But in this finals, if they can't find a way to slow him down or contain him with their plethora of guards, I think it's to be kind of over. We all expect that Jokic is going to get his numbers, right? I mean, multiple games in the Western Conference Finals, he had 10 assists, 10 rebounds before a half. Like, it's going to happen. In the post-game press conferences, they even acknowledged it. They were just saying, we don't know how we're going to stop him quite yet. We have until June 1st to figure it out. But I think what they were really trying to hint at is they need to figure out a way to really contain Jamal Murray, because if he gets loose and Jokic is also playing like Jokic, I think that's just kind of a recipe for disaster, and that's the recipe that will beat the Heat in at least a few games in this finals alone. So that's my big key for the Heat. the biggest key for the Nuggets is you kind of mentioned this earlier, but MPJ, Aaron Gordon, Contavious Caldwell Pope, they don't need to be averaging crazy numbers, like probably not even above 15 points, really. But if they could just fulfill the roles and hit the shots where they're really counted on, I think that's going to be honestly plenty fine for the Nuggets to just beat the Heat. I don't think the Nuggets need to do anything extraordinary other than just play like themselves, and they're going to win the finals, which is why I think we're going to need to see another Heat masterclass for them to win this series.
Yeah, I think one thing you hit on that I kind of loved was their depth pieces. If they need to run into depth, they might have some troubles. I know Christian Braun, the rookie, was coming off the bench a lot the like first and second series, and he didn't come off the bench at all during the Lakers. And I think that shows that the deeper you get into the playoffs, some of those role players might not show up and you can't play them. But how will that last in a 7 game series? I mean, the Nuggets got lucky. I mean, they played 5 games against the Timberwolves. They played 6 games against Booker and KD, basically, and then they played only 4 games against the Lakers. So they haven't had to go into a deep playoff run yet. So if this goes into 7, I can see them having issues with players like that. And I think like as we've seen with the Heat, if one person goes down, maybe minus Jimmy, everyone else steps up and they're fine. I'm scared if one of the better players of the Nuggets go down, that they might fall into some issues and have some holes that they can't fill. Um, I did look this up and I did see that Tyler Hero is aiming for they're aiming for his return for Game 3, so that'll be interesting on how that works. So
At home.
at home, yeah. So that would be very interesting, and I can't wait to see that. Also, I think something that we might need to talk about in the future, and I'll just mention it now, is say the Heat don't shoot well and the Nuggets win this. Is this one of the weaker playoff runs we have seen? I mean, they went through the Timberwolves, which nothing against them. Anthony Edwards is great and all, but as we see, the Cat Gobert thing just doesn't work, and they easily took them in 5. The Suns were hyped up to be all good and so, but if Booker and KD weren't putting up 80 points together, they were no good. DeAndre Ayton, more or less, was a wimp down low. Yeah, it was nothing. And then you have Landry Damn Shamit shooting threes, and that's about your whole team right there. Chris Paul is needs to be in a retirement home. So
He was injured.
yeah, oh yeah, true. He did get injured. But like that was just a weak run. And then the Lakers. I mean, if you don't look at the playoffs, the Lakers were the 13th seed for 3/4 of the season. Like no
Mm-hmm.
one thought they were good, and they finally became good after this trade. But they brought in people that people like. They brought in players that people didn't believe in. Roy Hachimura, people thought he was a bum over in Washington. Like they were like, he's no good. Jared Vanderbilt at the Utah Jazz. I mean, he was a trade piece in the Gobert thing, and they wanted to ship him. Like no one thought he was gonna be an outstanding player, minus just a defender. I mean, D'Lo was kind of terrible anyway, but like these were players that um the Lakers got, who I think even when they got them, no one was like, oh, this team is a Eastern Conference Finals team. And then, not to knock him, but LeBron James isn't LeBron James anymore. He's a great leader. He tried to develop a 3-point shot. It's not falling like he wants it to, but he's not that force to reckon with. Now, he can, but as we've seen, he gets tired. I mean, I think it was in that Game 4. He got him up by so much right away, and you could just tell he was gassed after that. Like, he was just done for. And then AD is AD. I mean, on his highs, he might be the best center in the league. On his lows, he's terrible. You know, I mean, he's a good defensive player, but nothing offensively. So I think the Nuggets, if they would run through the Heat and the Heat would look terrible, I think this would potentially be one of the weakest playoff runs ever. No, not to discredit them. A championship's a championship, but I think this could be a very weak playoff run. Uh, Maybe even weaker than, I don't know, like the Milwaukee Bucks in 2020 when they went up against the Suns. Um, I don't know. I think that's just something to keep in the back of our mind because, yes, Jokic might be the best player in the world. That might be the best duo, him and Murray. But at the same time, I think that this playoff run was a lot easier, and they could have had a lot harder path if they had like to play different people.
Definitely. And something you mentioned or didn't mention with the Suns that I do want to mention, any team that goes up against a team that makes a giant midseason trade like that's not the roster that they really dream of. Like, yeah, they have Kevin Durant with Devin Booker now, but you look at their starting five and the bench players that came in, and they were just gutted. I mean, they really got, I think, a lot worse all the way around without, especially Mikal Bridges. But the amount of pieces they had to ship just to get Kevin Durant was insane. And I think next year is going to be the first true like Suns series where the Suns can go with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker with a team that they fully like and want to compete with. Because this team, when you make a trade for that big of a player in the midseason, it's just kind of like what can you get to possibly put around them. And I just wanted to mention that because I thought it was an important point. But
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
it's
I was gonna say if we go through every team in the West, they were riddled with something, minus the Nuggets. The number two
mhm,
seed Memphis Grizzlies, they had both of their bigs, like Steven Adams and Brandon Clark, both out. Plus, they had the whole Jaw stuff and the Dylan Brooks stuff, which isn't good. The
yeah,
number three seed, the Kings, they were probably your next best bet, but that was their first time into the playoffs in forever. You had the
mhm,
four seeded Suns, who we talked about, and to add on to your point, Durant only played, I think, like 5 games in the regular season with them. So he played nothing. You had the fifth seed Clippers, who Kawhi played like 2 games and PG didn't play any. You have the six seeded Warriors, where their their piece last year that basically I think helped them win a championship, Wiggins, didn't play the whole back half of the season because of personal issues. The
mhm.
seven seed Lakers, again, they were a midseason trade, so they didn't have a lot of time together, and they were not supposed to be good anyway. And then the eight seed Timberwolves, who had Cat out all year long, and the Twin Towers just don't work. So I think the whole West was a lot weaker than what we kind of first anticipated, which I think made the Nuggets run a lot easier.
Definitely. The most interesting part about the West this 2023 NBA season was the race to the playoffs, not the race in the playoffs.
100%.
And looking at the Kings, especially, like I don't want to harp on the Kings, but going into the playoffs, the reason why that they were a popular upset pick was I think they were either the worst or one of the worst highest seeds, like one, two, or three in defensive efficiency in NBA history. I mean, and teams that are terrible at defensive efficiency in NBA playoffs never ever like go on to win anything significant. Like maybe a playoff series, but like definitely not a conference finals, let alone a finals. And a team that young and inexperienced, like they were honestly like put there to lose. Like, and I'm sorry, like when you go against the reigning NBA champions, like I get they were up against the Warriors and they could have put them out a few times, but to me, they were always bound to lose that series. And I think besides Denver, everybody in there had their own issues that almost made it impossible for them to win 4 straight rounds of NBA playoff basketball.
So my question to you is, what is your final take on how the playoff finals is going to go? Like, give me a Heat or Nuggets and how many games?
So I'll start with the Heat. I think the Heat's starting five and their role players are going to continue to play as well as they did in the Eastern Conference Finals. However, the matchup with the Nuggets is going to be a lot different than the matchup with the Celtics. The Celtics were very much a wing first team, and the Nuggets are just not. Their weak links are the wings, but they're going to get cooked a lot more from the point guard position. I don't think Bam is going to be able to stop Jokic at all. I really don't know what the Heat are going to be able to throw at Jokic. I mean, to me, I know Bam thinks he should have won Defensive Player of the Year. I don't. I don't think Bam can stop Jokic. And we will see how that take turns out at the end of this series. But I think Jokic is going to get his numbers, cook them. The Heat's role players are going to play well, but I think Jamal Murray is going to be able to escape their coverage a few times. It may take a game or two for both teams to figure out exactly how they want to piece against the other piece of the puzzle. But I think the Nuggets aren't going to be concerned as much with Jimmy as they are going to be concerned with stopping the entire team from cooking them in general. Because I think it's going to be kind of easy. I mean, Eric Gordon and Michael Porter Jr., they're fine defenders. I don't think they will be necessarily cooked as much guarding Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler will have his like crazy turnaround shots, baseline shots, mid range shots, but I don't think Mike Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon would be like liabilities out there. I think Aaron Gordon is going to get his numbers up a little bit more. I think in the Western Conference Finals, he only averaged 12.8 points per game. I wouldn't be surprised if he averaged above 15 points per game. Kentavious Caldwell Pope, I think, is going to shoot 5 from 3. That's pretty much his only role. Just kind of be there for when the ball comes to you. You kind of mentioned it. Some of their other guys that they play a little bit less minutes, especially in last series. Jeff Green, he only played 16 and a half minutes per game in the Western Conference Finals. But if they're going to need him to step up in a bigger role, he's 36. And he's not like a LeBron James 36. He's like a slow 36. Like one that's probably looking at retirement pretty soon here. And like Reggie Jackson, Christian Braun, they barely played any minutes in the last series. But if the Nuggets starting 5 is not on fire, that opens a lot of doors for the Heat. And if the Heat's role players around Jimmy Butler, and I'll start calling them role players, if Jimmy Butler's teammates don't perform as well, that opens a lot more doors for the Nuggets, essentially. I think this is going to be a lot less of a stars finals. It's going to be a lot more of a team finals. Which team is going to be hitting on all cylinders, and that team is going to beat the other team in the NBA finals. As simple as that may sound, I really think that's the entire key for both the Heat and the Nuggets.
If I'm gonna be honest with you, you said everything perfectly, and I would just quotation everything you just said. I think that was a perfect. The one person you did forget about that I want to bring up is a Bruce Brown off the bench. Him and Kentavious Caldwell Pope are the two big minutes off the bench. So if he could step up, that would be big help for them. But I do think it's gonna be an interesting matchup to watch because I think everyone is counting out Bam. I think when we all look at it, we're all gonna end up counting out the Heat, and I know Bam said he loves the underdog mentality, and that's how they've been playing all playoff long. So I think it'll be interesting. If I was a betting man, I'd still have the Nuggets winning, probably in like 6, maybe 7. But I'm not counting out the Heat though.
Definitely. What do you think the Heat need to do in their first 2 games to not fall into a panic mode? Because I think a panic mode for the Heat is they go down 0-2 in Denver. And I'd be curious to hear your perspective on what they need to do to prevent panic.
So, first I'll say I personally don't think their panic is down 2-0. I think their panic is if they're down 3-1 or 1-3 or whatever. If they lose both in Denver, they got to win both at home. Like I think if they don't win both at home, then they're in panic mode. But I think their key to not get out of panic mode, which is it's hard to say because you can't control this the most times, but you got to hit your shots. Those role players, they got to hit the shots. Honestly, if they steal one over at Denver in that altitude, I think the Heat could win it all. If they steal one, my perspective I fully expect Denver to win both at home. They've been undefeated so far at home in the playoffs. I expect them to win both of those. But if he could grab one of those, I think it becomes a very different playoff in my eyes, at least. Because I think it'll be close games, but I think the Nuggets will be on the better side of that not every time, but 9 times out of 10. I think the Heat might only get like 1 or 2. But if the Heat can steal some of those, it becomes interesting. Because if you get the Heat up 2-1 or something, I mean, Jimmy's going to be like, okay, guys, we got to just get one more, and then we can talk about the next game. Like, he's going to get these his troops to rally behind him, and they're going to go ultra bonkers. So I think to stay out of the panic mode, you just got to shoot well. I know that's hard to do sometimes, even if you just get into slumps. And as much as we like Eric Spoelstra, he has to be on his A game. He has to think about every adjustment possible. He's been phenomenal so far, but he cannot let up.
They need to take a page out of Celtics book and just say, don't let us get one.
Yeah.
Because if they do get one on the road, that changes everything, I think.
And it's so scary. Like, Butler in the post game interviews, I mean, he's just so scary the way he thinks and stuff. Like, it's like he's taking it as like a joke and stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, that's not good. Like, I would hate to be the other team.
Yeah, like I personally want Jimmy Butler as like my mentor because his mindset is just like amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it is. Well, your finals prediction is
Nuggets in 6.
my finals prediction is also Nuggets in 6. However, I am personally rooting for a Heat in 7. That is
Me
where
too.
I want to make that very clear. I want a Heat in 7. I want Jimmy Butler to get his first ring. And we
We're
will
rooting
see.
for history.
Yeah, we are rooting for history. First 8 seed, first play in 8 seed as well. And we will reconvene in a few days after the finals has been getting going. But I just want to thank everybody for listening into this. Whether you're coming from TikTok, YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, Twitter, watching these clips or the full thing, just want to say thanks. We appreciate it a ton. And we can't wait to see you guys in the next one. So thank you guys.